This is the Epic Hell video for this Advent. I was testing out two teams. The first one was just the one that I thought of immediately, and the second one I was trying for no limited and no ML5s. And for my phase 3, I actually like my second team a lot more, because I think my first team was a little bit too complicated. So if you're looking to mix the teams, I would try the second phase 3 team first. We can go into the units. For phase 1, you need a provoke unit, and the best provoke unit that we're going to get is Senya. Senya, her S3, AoE provoke, gives her counterattack buff, so then she can counter with her S1 and spam more provokes. This also locks down the ads and prevents them from healing and cleansing the boss. Really, really nice. And at the very start of the fight, she'll instantly tank a non-crit, so she gets speed buff immediately too, and she has this up pretty much permanently. So, for stats, you want her 85 effectiveness with 145 effect res if you have a plus 30 Bastion, because Bastion will give at least 55 F res always. If you don't have Bastion, you need 200. And these stats, if you can't do this, because I have her as my highest attack, you can just drop all of the attack and just go only for F res and F. Her S2 passive makes it pretty easy to get this much attack, so long as you have attack main right sides. But if you need an F res main, then do that. It's not too important for her to be highest attack, because the next unit we're using is Vivian. Vivian, her S3, non-attack skill gives everybody attack buff and immunity. The immunity is really nice because it prevents her and the other DPS from getting pushed back. And this will also cleanse the decaying curse if she's your highest attack instead of Senya. And then make sure you're on the S3 cleanse EE as well, because this will cleanse the stigma that gets applied at the start of the fight. So then for her stats, just make her the fastest unit on your team. Senya's going to go first because of her speed buff, but that doesn't really matter. Just make sure Vivian goes before your other DPS. And then just give her damage stats afterwards. For Artifact, I gave her Tagahells, because Tagahells, the souls are nice and Vivian's damage doesn't really matter. If you're struggling with damage, you can give her Daydream Joker, but you might need your Daydream Joker on your other units. It depends how many you have. And then the third unit I used for my first team was Galilius. So the build I actually used was not this one, it was more like this. That's not it. Yeah, the build I used was this one, because this was the PvP build I had for her and I was too lazy to regear. But she doesn't need to be this fast. You can run this left one and it'll be fine. But this is the one that you'll see in the video, just so you know. It's just damage, and she has guaranteed crit, so you don't need crit chance on her. And then for Artifact, Daydream Joker, because she does much more damage than Vivian. Just make sure you don't kill the boss too fast, because you do need to get your provokes in to get rid of the mana buff first. And then for Team 2, first up is Mercedes, the main AoE DPS. Immunity set's really nice because I run her slow so I can get more damage stats, and the immunity set prevents her from getting pushed back by the boss S1 and messing up your turn order. Then Portrait for more AoE damage. So this is pretty basic, it's just DPS stats with immunity and speed. You do need 100% crit chance because the mushrooms are dark even if the boss is Earth. And then there is Mascot Hazel. Mascot Hazel, I have her on this just because I wanted souls. But you can use Rod or Magaraha's Tomb if you want a better sustain artifact. And then for her stats, I made her slower than the boss as well. And also, I gave her 200 F-res to prevent her from getting pushed back by the boss. You could just use immunity set for this, it would be fine. And then some defense and HP. In Epic Hell, the boss ignores F-res, so this doesn't really matter. But the 200 F-res is really nice for Hell. And then for the last slot, I'm using Flan. I just have her slower than Mercedes because of her 100 evasion. She just dodges everything, so she doesn't need immunity set. You can just build her full damage. And I have her on DDJ. And then for phase 3, my first team was a little bit weird. I just did Spectre Tenebria on DDJ with Rage Pen. That's why I have the Tagahells on Vivian and also the hair tie on Hazel, just for soul stacking, so I can spam Sene soul burns into the boss, which, like I mentioned earlier, might be a bit unnecessary because I found her pretty easy phase 3 with much easier units. But just so you can see the stats for the one I used for the first one, 200 FRES, Midnight Bloom, and then slow speed, because I want Singelica to go after the boss so she can cleanse the... or so that the attack buff doesn't get stripped by the boss. And then for Inos, I have her on Touch of Rekos because if Stene tanks every single hit, she will die, so the Rekos helps prevent that from happening. And then 85 effectiveness, so you can Death Break the boss. You can Soul Burn her S1 for 100% chance Death Break. And also, her S3 can't be counterattacked, so if you take a second turn and you already have Death Break, so you don't need to Soul Burn S1 again, you can just use S3 because this can't get countered. And Stene S1 obviously can't get countered either, which is why we're using her. And she probably doesn't need to be this fast. I just had her this fast so I would have a chance to loop back around and S1 a second time. But it's a bit RNG depending on who gets pushed back by the boss. And then the rest of her stats don't really matter. It's just F, speed, and a little bit of bulk. So then that's it for the stats for the first team, and now I will show you the run. So the main thing for the first phase is just to land all your provokes. There's not really too much to say. You just open with Senya S3, and my Gala is a little bit too fast, so she does take the first turn. But it doesn't really matter, because Senya instantly cleanses the thing, and I don't use debuffs anyways. So, Gala use S3 on Atros. And then you can Senya S3, and if your provokes get resisted, you can just reset the fight, because this is still super early on into the fight. And you don't have to reset if you get resisted, because the ads only cleanse one debuff. So even if the ad gets to move, he will only cleanse the blind, which you can see happens here. The provoke is still on the boss, and I can just provoke him via that. If you're using a Death Break, then you might want to reset if you don't blind the boss, because then the Death Break will get cleansed, but I'm not using debuffs here, so it's not a huge deal. And we've cleared the mana buff, so at this point we can just clear, and I'm just waiting for Gala to kill the boss. Now we are entering phase 2. So here you can see Mercedes is immune to everything. I don't really know why I have her in the front, but just give her greater attack buff. You can S3 to kill the ads. And with Flan, you can Soul Burn her S3 to land Death Break. And now here, nobody got Stigma'd, but if the Stigma goes on Mercedes, you can S2 her with Hazel to cleanse it. And then the Flan dual attack pushes us into phase 3. And here in phase 3, this is what we had all the souls for. Soul Burn, the Death Break, the boss. And Stene dodged all of the hits here, but Rekos would have been necessary if she did get hit. Give her attack buff, and we can spam the Soul Burns for S1s, and then S3, and the boss will be dead. And that's it for the first clear. And now we can take a look at the second team. So once again, Senya, 85 effectiveness, 145 FRES with Bastion because it gives 55. If you don't have Bastion, go for 200. And then ideally highest attack, but it doesn't really matter that much because my second team is still using Vivian. Vivian can just cleanse the Decaying Curse for you as long as she's your highest attack or higher attack than your other DPS. And then it's just damage stats with a good amount of speed, so she moves before your other DPS. And then I have her on Tag of Hell still because I was too lazy to swap it. And make sure you're on the S3 Cleansey. So instead of Gala, this time I'm using Bologna. And Bologna, I did have her on Daydream Joker. So I had her like this. It's just 85 effectiveness, so you can Death Break the boss. And then speed, Pen, because her S1's doing pretty much all the damage. With a good amount of speed as well. Her S1, you could Soul Burn for an extra turn. So the Tag Hells from Vivian does actually come in handy, because if you miss your first Death Break, you can wait until you have 4 focus, then Soul Burn S1, so you can S1 into S3, and if you land Death Break, then you can just S1 again and the boss will be dead. That's it for the first team, and then for the second team, once again, Mercedes and Hazel. Mercedes, I have her slow for more damage stats, but immunity set helps cover the pushback. And then Portrait, so she's just the AoE DPS to clear out the mushrooms. And then Hazel, this really unnecessary, I think, actually, for the second team, but didn't need the healing, so I just kept the hair tie on her. And I just have her slower than the boss with 200 F-res. And then instead of Flan, I used Camilla instead. Pretty much completely random gear, but with immunity set. You need 85 effectiveness. And I also have her slower than Mercedes, because you want her to go after Mercedes, so that Mercedes can clear out all of the mobs first. The important thing about Camilla is you can soul burn S1 for Death Break and dual attack, so you can just pull Mercedes and kill the boss that way. Even if you miss Death Break, you have a couple of chances to go for it. It's a little bit RNG depending on where the stigma gets applied, but it's not that bad, and you can just reset if you have really bad RNG. So that's it for phase 2. And then for phase 3, first up, the DPS I'm using is Sirmia. This is just my Light Expedition Sirmia, but with Daydream Joker. It's just 190 speed is a pretty good range, somewhere like 180, 190, because you do want to take 2 turns if you don't have really good Rage Pen gear. You could just use Rage Pen and one-shot the boss, honestly, because I got pretty close to killing it in a one-shot even with this. But if you don't have that, just do 190 with good DPS stats. You only need 85 crit chance, like I said, this is Light Expedition Sirmia, which is why she has 100. For her EE, I'm using the Barrier EE, which I'm not sure if it's mandatory, but the Barrier does help with surviving. And then make sure you're using Daydream Joker, of course. The second unit I'm using is Acades. Acades is just because she has a big heal on her S3, and then S2, Invincible, you can toss into Sirmia to help keep her alive. And for her stats, it's really just the speed. You want to make sure that she is able to heal you up efficiently. The rest of her stats are random. I think I have her on the skulls using it for Hall of Trials. It's just her leftover Hall of Trials gear. So it's just, her stats don't really matter. And then the last unit is Isaria. Isaria, with her S3, Death Break, Unbuffable, and with Song of Stars, gives target. You want to make sure she's the fastest unit on your team. Even if she gets pushed back, you want her to be able to move before Sirmia twice. The important thing is that she can S3 to land Unbuffable, Death Break, and target if you have Song of Stars. And then on the next turn, she can S2 to reset Sirmia's skills, and you can also Soulburn S1 to apply debuffs again. This lets Sirmia get 2 S3s off with greater attack buff, so you can pretty much just blast through the third phase. And now I will show you guys the run. So it's pretty much the same for this setup. You just want to land all your provokes in phase 1. The only difference is, since we are trying to rely on a Death Break, if you miss a provoke and one of the ads is going to get to use their S2, if you didn't blind the boss, you definitely want to reset because the Death Break is going to get cleansed. Here we landed all the provokes, so it's not an issue. Bologna S3 for Death Break, and we did manage to land it. If you don't land your Death Break, you can wait 1 turn. Once Bologna hits 4 focus, you can then Soulburn her S1 on the next turn. So you can S1, proc S3, and then S1 immediately again, and that should be able to kill the boss. If you also have enough souls that you're safe for phase 3, you can also just burn Soulburn on Bologna just to speed up the fight a bit. Here, my damage was a little bit off. Probably should have soul burned just to speed it up, because the boss cut Bologna before she got to attack into the Death Break on her second turn. But it's fine, Senya moves us into phase 2. So here, just give Hazel the greater attack buff. And we got immunity buff, so we can tank it even if they hit Mercedes. We S3, we kill all the mushrooms. And I can Soulburn S1 and try and Death Break the boss, which landed on our first hit, which is really good. We can S2 Mercedes to get rid of the stigma. And now we can S2 and move into the next phase. You can see we overkilled the boss a lot, plus Camilla's turn was still coming up, so you can definitely be lower damage on Mercedes, as long as you kill the ads. Here we open up with Asteria S3. And we landed all 3 debuffs, which is really lucky. We get S3 for healing. And we got way more souls than we needed, but we can silver in S3. And the boss is pretty much almost dead already, so even if we miss our debuffs on the next one, should still be able to kill. So we can reset Sirmia now to give her S2 and S3 back. Silver in S1. And we missed on target, but it's no big deal. Because we can just S2, Silver in S3 again. And the boss is dead. We overkilled the boss by a lot there as well, so you can definitely be in lower damage on Sirmia and be fine. But that's it for the second run. And that is it for the Epic Hell runs. I really like the Akades Asteria Sirmia team. I didn't think it would actually be that easy or consistent when I first started trying it, but worked pretty well. This Epic Hell was not too bad. I really like the changes they did for Provoke, because nobody was, or the only unit that worked before was really Winter, and having Senya a much easier, much more accessible alternative is really good. It does suck that you can't really just one-shot it anymore, but it's still a pretty fast clear and you only need 3 runs, so it's not a huge deal. And good luck to anybody who is trying to do their runs.